I wanted to do a video today because Kent sent me a DM yesterday and asking, like, when you're playing, are you aware of the scale degrees as you're improvising? And I kind of have a confession to make, which is that no. And I think there is this idea, there's not a mic on, that when someone that you like they're playing, so I'm not saying I'm a great improviser or anything like that, but you do, if you watch this channel, see me doing it every single day. So that's kind of the thing. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but if you're asking about how I think about this stuff, that's what I'm talking about here. I think there is this idea in general that if you're liking what someone's playing or improvising, that there's a lot of thought going on and maybe a lot of careful consideration. I'm here saying to you that that's not the case for me when I'm just improvising and just playing. I just happened to see a thing from Matthew McConaughey talking about his, a first take that he took of the Interstellar scene where he sees his kids and all that stuff. And the thing that he says was your first take is the thing, and anything after that is acting. And I kind of get this as a point. So generally you'll see my first takes on here. I kind of going to give you a first take here over some changes, which are a version of what's going on, which I do improvise a bit. But I kind of just wanted to talk to you about what I am maybe thinking, what I practice, and what I've heard other people say about this, in case it helps at all. By the way, if you're interested in, learning more and all that sort of stuff, TrueFire are running a 10-week boot camp at the moment, which is free and is instructor-led. Has a video a week, so it's worth, I think, if you're trying to get a little bit more out of the guitar, signing up to that and getting involved, in my opinion. Link is in the description below. I think it's easy to kind of just say, I'm not thinking, but I think this is one of those things where people, I'm not sure if it is necessarily trying to give the illusion, but in trying to give you a roadmap for how you could get better at improvising, give you a lot of things to think about, which is part of practice and not necessarily part of improvising. So I think of things like when people talk about targeting chord tones, and you see like these jazz lines that are very meticulously planned and go through all of the chord tones, and they'll talk about, this resolves from the 4 to the 3 and then it hits the flat 7 of the next chord, And I think in some cases, some of these things just happen, and it's as a result of practicing certain things, and not necessarily something that improvisers are thinking of in the moment. Is kind of my take on this. So here I just wanted to sort of talk through some of this stuff. So should you know your scale degrees? My take on this is absolutely yes. So if you give me an F, can I sing a B flat against it? B flat? Yes, I can. Can I sing a G against it, the second degree of the scale? G, F. Yeah, I can do all this. C, B flat, B. I need to tune my guitar. You know, so I could sing each individual degree against it. And you could do this without knowing note names, right? Incidentally, like so. 5, 6, 7. Or you could do it without even knowing the numbers, right? So this is one of the things, like my mum can play on saxophone without really knowing too much about what's going on necessarily. It's kind of like instinct-led playing, and I think that is quite a big part of what good improvisers do, but it can really help to back it up with some stuff. So you've seen like lots of players that maybe say they don't know much theory at all, and if you know this sort of thing, you can probably get away with quite a lot of you know, just sort of pentatonic stuff can get you a long way. But I think one of the things that really, really good improvisers possibly have also going on is extra knowledge, where if you ask them, you know, outside the moment, can you just, what is that thing that you were doing there? And I think this is where you get some of this from. You would go, well, actually, it happens that my instincts seem to be guided by what I've practiced over the years. So, you know, that's, I think, quite a big part of, you know, people sounding like they're knowing what they're doing rather than it just sounding completely random. And then also like this chord tone thing and where the kind of jazzy lines come from. I think the way that people are told to practice jazz helps to build in, you know, if someone tells you to practice this sort of thing, then you're going to get lines that necessarily do this sort of thing, and it's not necessarily that they're thinking all the time like, oh, I'm targeting, I'm enclosing and all that. There probably is an element of that, like, so if I'm on chord 2, like I could think, right, I'm going to enclose around the third of the G minor chord, but once I know that that as a move works, then it's just more a case of going, right, well that sounds quite good, and it becomes like a bit of a muscle move rather than a thing that I'm consciously thinking of any time I hear a chord 2 or like a chord 4. Could I do it over a chord 5? Because that's going to be, the B flat is going to be the flat 7 of chord 5. Probably get away with it. But I don't, hopefully that sort of makes a bit of sense, like knowing the theory behind that part is not the thing that is necessarily going to then guide me every time I improvise. So I'm not thinking like loads of these technical thoughts as I'm playing. It's more just relying on like sensible things that you've practiced, like, you know, knowing da 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 da. Where have I settled there? I'm on the 7th degree of the scale, which is an E. There's an E here. I can't sing as well as you. Da, 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 And give this sort of thing a go. I think if you're trying to get more of a sense of some of this stuff, like it isn't not tons to know, you know, like all I'm doing here is major scale stuff, but having a really good knowledge of what each part of the major scale sounds like, I think you can only sort of reveal for yourself. So if you have something that's sustaining, like an F chord, take time listening to each part of the scale, and can you sing it without playing it first? This is a thing that I've heard Julian Large say, which is, it's not like a negative thing. Sometimes he doesn't know what sound is going to come out of the guitar. That's the really cool thing about having shapes to fall back on about the guitar. And even when I play piano, I'm not thinking like of each note as it passes. I'm thinking about playing within a scale and knowing sort of a mixture of muscle, mixture of theory, a mixture of all these things, where it's like, if I go to here, it's going to make this sound. So against this F, for example, can you sing the 6th degree of the scale, the D? I don't know, maybe try it. D. It's sharp for you there. Can you sing a C? C. Can you sing an F? F. But you can also get to this sort of thing where you're not necessarily thinking about the degrees of the scale either. And if you really know your shapes well, and this is one of those other things that comes in, it's like you can bypass the thing where you have to think about what note it is, and you just follow it with your guitar. I think I got to this area a little bit better by just playing along with lots of records, and you basically just find like the key the thing is in, and then you try and copy like various lines, like whatever it is. So if I'm thinking like, for instance now, I don't know, just something in F, even though it's like songs that I've played before, I never really think about the melody as like each sort of note by itself. All of that was entirely instinct-led. Now, if I think about it, I can go, okay, well, this is going to start on the D, down to the C, down to the, whatever that is, A and G. Do you see what I mean? Like, I'm not even necessarily knowing each note before I play it, or even after I played it. And can I do that all over the neck? Yeah. So what I would say is it's not about knowing theory. It's not about knowing how, like, ear training. It's not about any of these things. It's like a holistic thing where people that have got it together quite well, I think, have a bunch of these elements down. Does that make any sense? For instance, like chord-wise, I don't really think about any of these chords in the same way that you might. Like, I know these for their sounds. And I know them for their flavour of what they might be. So I know that this is like a B flat flavoured chord, and it works well over a 4. I know this is a 2 flavoured chord. I know this is a 5 flavoured chord, but with a suspension. I know this is like a major 3 type of chord, like an A in first inversion or a diminished chord. Here's a 6 flavoured chord. Here's a 2 in first inversion major chord. It's not, in my opinion, and the way that I play, much of it is not super heavy theory, not super heavy like every single note is thought about. It's very instinct kind of led, and I think maybe this is something we should talk about more, because it's not necessarily a course I can sell you on this. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit of a, I can just tell you that this is what I spend my days doing, and tell you that, you know, for instance, over my F or even over my B flat, you know, could I sing a C? C. Yeah, okay, that's all right. Can I sing an A? A. There's a B flat, there's a G, there's an F, there's an E, there's a C. But as I'm doing this, that's a D, not a C. In my head, what happened there was I was just taking over and saying the wrong note. But in my head, I was following what was happening. Boom da, boom da, boom ba, boom ba. And maybe try that. Like, does this make sense? Like, trying to make this link between, it's like what you're hearing, what you're singing, what you're playing, be a bit more instinctual. And I think for me, the way that kind of makes more sense is if you really know your major scale very well, or your pentatonic scale, whatever you're playing in, but major scale is going to cover you most of the time. And have you done this thing where you're literally just playing along with records like all the time, or, you know, whenever you get a chance, and trying to literally just make that melody appear on the fretboard. Sometimes you might want to start and then think about, like, well, what is that? You know, is that the second? Is that the first? Is that, and the note names and that stuff? But that is only an option, in my opinion. Like, you can just literally, if you have a good fretboard mind thing going on, you can bypass that completely. And I think that's part of what goes on when you hear someone improvise fluently, is that they've sort of shut off that thing where they're thinking too much about what they're playing, and they're kind of letting that brain-hand connection happen in the key and not thinking about it too much. Does that make sense? I hope that's okay to talk about, and I hope that's, I don't know, does that answer your question, Kent? Like, yes, I could think about, to some extent, notes as they pass through, or the intervals, but more of what's going on is this sort of thing where my mind and my fingers hopefully are connected up quite nicely, and that's what's happening. Or hopefully, like, that's not even what's happening, but that's something that I practice. And when you're playing along with songs that you really like, but like pop songs, things that you like to listen to, and picking out melodies and figuring what was happening there, I think that's where you can get some of these skills that are necessary for, I think, improvising really well. And it's not all theory based. A lot of this, I think, with really great improvisers, is quite instinct based. and muscle memory and these kinds of things. And that's why it really does matter kind of what you practice. And, you know, if you're doing lick practice, figuring out, well, what would that look like in another key or sound like in another key? That's kind of where the theory part can come in really handy. It's like, well, I can now transform this piece of information to work in a bunch of different places, and it becomes part of like one of those things that you go to. Does that make sense? I don't know, hopefully, maybe. Patreon is a place that you get a bunch of my backings if you are looking for that. And also this was using the pads preset in F, which is a Helix preset. If you want to try some of these pads presets and play along with them, then it could be a good, useful tool for practicing, maybe for the ear training stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's a combination of putting all these things together, I think, that can be really beneficial.